Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Simmons with AIM. Welcome to week 10 of the 2021 legislative session. We're back with another update. Smaller crew today. Got Lindsay Moss and Jenna Nepper. Let's dive right in, Jenna, and talk about broadband, which is always on everyone's mind, especially since the pandemic, making sure everyone in Indiana has access to broadband. What's the latest?
Yeah, so three of the broadband bills we've been tracking, all very similar, were heard in committee. House Bill 1449, authored by Representative Soliday, actually passed out of committee, but he chairs House Utilities, and during that committee where they heard two Senate versions of the broadband bill, he talked about waiting to see what the federal government is going to do in terms of broadband funding. So I think as this conversation continues to play out, during session, we're going to wait and see what the federal government does. At least that's the approach Representative Soliday mentioned during committee this week.
Thanks, Jenna. Lindsay, we haven't talked too much, a little bit in legislative summary here and there about the governor's executive authority. And there was a bill heard this week to limit somewhat the governor's executive authority pertaining to emergency situations. What happened this week?
Yeah, this has been a big conversation all throughout session in terms of, the role that the General Assembly plays when there is a prolonged emergency like we've been experiencing throughout the pandemic. And at what point, if ever, the General Assembly can call itself into an emergency session or a special session. Because current law, it's, the governor's exclusive purview and decision on whether or not to call the General Assembly back in session. So these conversations have been ongoing. Each chamber has their own version of the bill. The House's is House Bill 1123 and the Senate's is Senate Bill 407. But House Bill 1123 was heard yesterday in the Senate Rules Committee. It was an extensive hearing, about 4 hours worth of testimony. And it was a tense exchange at times over the role that the General Assembly should play and wanting more involvement in some of the decisions that have been made. So I don't think that leadership have reached a final agreement right at this point. The bill was not voted out of committee for further discussion and amendment. But I think you will continue to see that conversation ongoing. One piece of these discussions, though, deals with local enforcement orders and local restrictions that might be more strict or less stringent than what is set out in the governor's executive order in times of emergency. And the current version of House Bill 1123 says that local units can have less restrictive orders locally if the governor's executive order allows that. But if they want to have a more strict order, then that would require either county commissioner approval for county health departments or city council approval for those three cities that have their own health department. So kind of some of the local enforcement of the governor's executive orders are also being discussed in the context of this conversation.
Hey, Jenna, asset management plans that, local governments are used to doing these. In recent years, they have to do an asset management plan in order to become eligible for grants such as community crossing grants. But there's some developments there in what's going to happen with those plans once they are completed. What's going on there?
Yeah, House Bill 1576 was authored by Representative Jake Teshka from Northern Indiana and sponsored by Senator Dorio. This bill requires that the Indiana Department of Transportation or someone that they contract with, so could be LTAP, likely LTAP, will post the asset management plans publicly. So these will be available now for everyone to see. It's no additional requirements for local units of government, just an ability to see and see these publicly moving forward.
Great. Before we close for this week, Lindsay, small cells and the ability to regulate small cell sightings in the right of way. We've talked about this all through session. but the bill involving small cells is moving along. There's an update there, right?
Not too much of an update. The bill is currently pending in the Senate Utilities Committee. It hasn't been scheduled for a hearing at this time, but we do continue to work with some of the stakeholders that are involved. It's a big bill that contains a variety of different telecom related provisions, but with the small cell piece in particular, the way that it stands now, even after our conversations with the stakeholders, has been that for those designated buried utility areas and those ordinances that were adopted prior to May 1 of 2017, any local review process or local waiver process of new small cell applications in these residential areas would not be subject anymore to a local review process if there's any existing above ground infrastructure other than light poles in those areas. So it's just kind of the next step in terms of whittling away the ability to regulate the siting of these new poles in areas that were designated for buried utilities.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure we'll have more to report on that in the days and weeks ahead. All right, that's all for this week. I encourage you to read the bill track list at the bottom of your legislative summary. Take a look, and as always, let us know if you have any questions. We'll see you next week.